started. Our chair is on his way, but we'll start without him. So I'd like to call to order the Planning and Zoning Commission meeting of Wednesday, January 24th, 2024. And as a first order of business, I will read the land acknowledgement. Oh, here is our chair. Well, why don't we read the acknowledgement and then I'll hand it over to you.
It'll take me a minute to set
Okay. Excuse me. The City of Albany recognizes that we occupy the land originally protected by the Confederated Villages of Lijon. We acknowledge the genocide that took place on these lands and must make strides to repay the moral debt that is owed to this indigenous people, specifically the Ohlone tribe. We thank them for their contributions, which have transformed our community and will continue to bring forth growth and unity. The City of Albany commits to sustaining ongoing relationships with the tribe and together build a better future for all that now make this their home. And with that, we could proceed to roll call.
Sure. Commissioner Hudson.
Present.
Commissioner Momin.
Here.
Commissioner Wadi.
Here.
Vice Chair McLeod.
Here.
And Chair Pilch.
Yes, actually here.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay.
So with that, we'll hand it back over to Chair Pilch to run the meeting.
Oh, thank you very much. And apologies, I just came from work, so you get to see me in my full work regalia, which is not what I meant, but there you have it. Okay. So we are at, we just did the land acknowledgement. Oops.
Item 3, ex parte communication.
Okay. Oh, here, I can use the paper copy. Do any commissioners have any ex parte communications to disclose? Yes.
Well, think
Commissioner
about it.
McLeod.
Yes, Jason called us, did send me an email explaining his position with the situation with windows, et cetera, which I read,
And this is in relation to 909 Santa Fe, which is our
yes,
later in
I
our
believe
agenda.
So, yeah. So
Okay.
I read the email, didn't respond.
Okay,
I figured it was staff matter still at that point.
appreciate that. Thank you for your disclosure. Anyone else with an ex parte communication? No? Okay, seeing none, and I have none either. We'll move on to the consent calendar. These items are normally routine and enacted by one motion unless a commissioner or member of the public wishes to pull an item for discussion. Does any commissioner need to pull an item for discussion? Or want to? No?
No.
Yes?
No.
No, okay. And does any member of the public want to pull an item for discussion out of the consent calendar? No one here in the room is raising their hand. Has any hands been raised?
We don't have any virtual attendees.
Oh, that's too bad. Okay, very good. All right, well, seeing none, we'll pull it back, and I'll ask for a motion from my commissioners.
I move the consent calendar as proposed.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Let's do a roll call vote. Commissioner Wadi?
Aye.
Commissioner Momin?
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod?
Aye.
And commissioners whose last name I always forget. I'm so, Hudson, so sorry.
Aye.
Thank you. Apologies.
Chair Pilch,
Yes,
your vote.
I'm sorry. Oh, yes, thank you. Appreciate that. All right. And we get to move on to our one substantial item. Sorry. Are there any, item 5 is announcements and communications. Are there any announcements and communications from staff?
Yes, I have a few. I sent you all an email with the packet along with my cell number. So please contact me if you're going to be late or missing a meeting by email or such. We're lucky to have Director Vaughn with us tonight, but he won't always be here. So it'd be good if I am made aware. Second, very exciting, we have a new associate planner starting for land use planning on Monday. Her name is Mira Han, and she has extensive experience, a graduate from the DCRP at Cal, so has a master's degree in city and regional planning. Had some experience as an assistant land use planner for the city of Piedmont, and we stole her from the city of Hayward as an associate planner, so I feel incredibly fortunate. So you will be meeting her soon. And then third, final announcement I have tonight is the city council did pass the ADU ordinance on the second reading, so that's very exciting. I passed it on to HCD, who said that they may review it, though we were required to submit it. The city council did have quite a bit of a discussion regarding the height of detached ADUs, and some had some concern about the 20 feet across the board, with some thought of maybe reconsidering an 18-foot with an additional 2-foot increase for a pitched roof, but they did pass it as you all did recommend. So maybe that will be coming in the future, I'm sure, along with other state-inspired amendments. So.
Thank you. Anything else from staff? No?
Nope.
Okay, any announcements from commissioners? And just to make sure that the public is aware, if you're here for 1504 Sonoma or 1046 Curtis, those items were on the consent calendar and we did pass those. So those items are complete and approved. And then we'll move on to item number 6 for public comments. This is the time for any members of the public to speak on items that are not on the agenda. Is there anyone in the audience who wants to speak on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no hands raised. Do we have any virtual attendees?
Yes, and if you'd like to speak on an item not on the agenda, please use the raise the hand icon at the bottom of your screen. No one wishes to speak.
Okay, great. Well, then we'll bring it back to the commission and move on to item 7, our one substantive item of the evening, the planning application 23-050 at 909 Santa Fe Avenue. Staff?
Great, thank you. Good evening. Again, my name is Leslie Mendez, and tonight there's a presentation for planning application 23-050, design review for 909 Santa Fe Avenue. The subject property is a 7,150 square foot lot. There is an existing 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom, 1,218 square foot single family home. The applicants did submit a project which includes an approximately 389 square foot, 14-foot, 9-inch tall, first-story addition at the rear of the existing home to accommodate a new primary bedroom, bathroom, an expanded pantry area off the laundry room. The project also includes a new covered porch there at the rear with stairs leading into the rear yard, which would provide a more direct flow from the primary living area to the outdoors. And the project would result in a 3-bedroom, 2-bathroom, 1,607 square foot single-story residence. The applicant has also requested to install vinyl-clad windows, contrary to the city's standard condition of approval for design review, prohibiting vinyl windows and siding. Staff was unwilling to support this exception, both because it undermines the intent of implying standard conditions of approval, and due to the aesthetic, as well as the cradle to grave, meaning the manufacturing to disposal impacts of vinyl products. In addition, staff is aware that there are many alternative window products that more closely match the city's design guidelines. However, as a courtesy and as authorized by the zoning code, the planning director did elevate this project to the Planning and Zoning Commission for review and decision. Just a little history of our vinyl regulations. The City of Albany's residential design guidelines were passed in 2009, and they provide design inspiration and recommendations for new residential development. Under the building materials section, the guidelines detail that when designing a home addition, avoid using vinyl, plastic, or foam trim, and vinyl windows are strongly discouraged. In 2022, as part of the San Pablo Avenue specific plan, the city adopted objective design standards that prohibit the use of vinyl window and siding within the specific plan area. Although the specific plan area standards are not applicable to this project, they do demonstrate the direction the city is moving towards. And given the aesthetic and environmental impact of vinyl and the city's ongoing commitment to ensure that new development is both quality and sustainable, as well as to standardized conditions that were inconsistently applied to design review projects in the past, staff incorporated the prohibition of vinyl siding and windows into a standard condition of approval for all design review projects in 2023. Just some general information, very overview, broad brush on vinyl. Aesthetically and structurally, vinyl windows tend to sag due to their flexibility, which also limits the size and weight of the glass they are able to frame. Furthermore, the flexibility of the material can cause warping or twists over time if heat builds up within the frame, as well as discoloration in certain weather conditions. In addition, they are difficult to paint. Most paints will not adhere easily to the vinyl, and some primers will actually weaken the material. And while a wood-clad vinyl window would address some of these aesthetics as well as structural concerns, it will not address the environmental impacts of vinyl use. So the production of vinyl, also known as PVC or polyvinyl chloride, has an unsustainable material life cycle, meaning both its production and disposal is toxic to humans and the environment. When vinyl windows are manufactured, the process creates a variety of harmful chemicals and carcinogens which have been linked to environmental degradation, as well as connected to serious human health conditions in factory workers and surrounding communities. The disposal of PVC waste in landfills and incinerators releases the toxins into the environment, and when PVC burns in accidental fires, it poses serious threats not just to the residents, but to our emergency responders. Additionally, although vinyl can be recycled, this is not an easy process, as recycling requires complete separation, as well as grounding or melting the materials, which results in the release of those same toxic materials that were originally released during manufacturing. Zoning code requires that the reviewing authority, which is you all tonight, to evaluate all design review applications in terms of their adherence to specific standards, including, and most highlighted here, conformance to residential design guidelines. In sum, staff does not believe that the use of vinyl complies with the residential guidelines and therefore does not meet the required standard of design review. And as there is no safe way to manufacture, use, or dispose of the highly hazardous plastic, staff believes the Commission should approve this project with the standard condition of approval prohibiting vinyl windows and siding. If, however, the Commission does wish to waive or otherwise modify this condition in the interest of consistency, equity, as well as for the integrity and importance of applying standard conditions of approval, staff will apply any revisions to this condition to all design review projects moving forward. And that concludes my presentation. I am here for any questions you may have, and I know the applicant team is here as well with the presentation.
Did the applicant want to say a few words?
Yeah. Thank you. Here.
Yeah. Which one? That
There,
public
that
comment
one.
one? There, yeah.
I brought some samples of the windows that we specified. These are the Anderson. Pass them around. So this one is the Anderson 400 series. It has an exterior thin clad vinyl, but the structural aspect is
Thank you for that. And if you could keep your remarks fairly short.
I want to also show you what a vinyl frame is. This is the vinyl frame window that doesn't take pains and sags because it's structured not so that these windows do not have that problem at all.
Completely vinyl.
I'd like to show you two other products, since the plan manager mentioned that there are other choices of products. This one's a rather interesting product in that
Jason, I think you're going to need to use a microphone. We're being broadcast, so if you can just put those on the table and then.
this is a fiberglass window with a vinyl nail flange. And these are the details that are associated with the Anderson windows that meet the design review. Divided by the same, all of that.
I'll just note that quite a number of samples have been given to the commissioners for review. You have a few more. Yeah, if you could just place them maybe at the end.
Sure.
And then,
This is a traditional wood-clad, aluminum-clad wood frame window. And this is a fiberglass window with a vinyl nail flange. And it has a wood interior. Thank you. This is a fiberglass window that has wood cladding on the inside. It's only applied for aesthetic reasons on the inside. The structural strength and the nail flange that's attached to the frame of the building is the structural part of the window. And this is made of vinyl. Some of these windows have this kind of nail fin. They're made of vinyl. This is a window that would also have a vinyl nail flange, but it is a fiberglass window on the outside, and it's unusually a metal window on the inside. This one is the most expensive. This one is nearly unaffordable.
okay, thank you. Let the record show that we've been given quite a few examples of windows to look at, including some that are non-vinyl except for the nailing flange.
Correct. So tonight I brought samples of those windows to show you the range of options that applicants have for windows in this community. Nowhere was there an acknowledgement that this community on every single block, on each side of every single block, has no less than 3 or 4 houses completely retrofit with vinyl windows, and that the current window retrofit handout doesn't prohibit the installation of a house's worth of vinyl windows. On this application, we're asking for the use of this product on the back of the house, on an addition to the rear that's not seen from the street, but has all of the same design review qualities. It has the divided lights with the nicely shaped buttons. It has an integrally colored exterior cladding on it, and the divisions emulate the historical divisions that might have occurred on the house. The existing house has, unfortunately, 4 different types of windows on it. Currently, it has an aluminum window on the back porch. It has 1 single glazed wood frame window in the laundry room. It has half a dozen or more vinyl retrofit insert windows. And then sometime, you can tell me, when did you install the windows in the front?
2006, I think.
So 17 years ago. And you remember what the materials of those windows were? Yeah, they may be clad wood. They had Doug fir on the inside, but I couldn't find a mark on them. So, you know, we're here tonight because all of the other aspects of our project are approvable, and I appreciate that acknowledgement. I know that there is a lot of controversy about the use of vinyl, and I understand that there are other organizations and other places that have chosen to take this stance. I understand the accusation, or you know, that in the manufacturing process that there are unpleasant outcomes. We are also discovering that there are unpleasant outcomes with the use of aluminum, which is a very prominently used building material. So much so that the state of New Jersey has deemed that it is a human carcinogen. So if we're using litmus that worker safety is the reason for getting rid of these products, not user safety. There's very little user problems with these vinyl windows, contrary to what the planning manager wrote in the report. There is very little instance of this. In a non-fire situation, there is no hazard to these windows. There's no hazard to these windows. And certainly, the less is more in this case, so these thinly clad vinyl windows are less use of vinyl than in the all vinyl framed window. The other product that we are finding out has some worker hazards is all of the silica-based countertops. And silicosis is something that's associated with workers handling all of these lovely new products that we've been specifying in our kitchens for the last 20 years or so. So if the idea is that the prohibition is supposed to protect some workers, I think OSHA and other organizations are doing their best to improve working conditions and for people to be given masks and respirators and filters and so forth, and having wet environments to keep dust down. The thing I struggled with is that I can't find a ban on the windows, on the vinyl, except in the San Pablo Avenue specific plan, and the San Pablo Avenue specific plan is only applicable to San Pablo Avenue in R3 zones, and the design applicability standard in the ordinance says that the ordinance shall hew to the residential design review guidelines, which also don't prohibit the use of vinyl. And my own project experience in the city, in design reviewed projects, we have many projects. I mean, I've only been doing this for 22 years in the city of Albany on my own, but we have many projects that have been reviewed. I'm not sure by you 5, but have been reviewed by the 5 before you, and others as recently as 2019 and 2020, that include vinyl windows. The whole house is worth of vinyl windows. And I don't know if it happens every week or if it happens every month, but it must be at least every month. You're issuing permits for window replacements that are vinyl. And you can drive around, and I took some time. I had to do it off the clock. I had to see for myself, what's the hullabaloo about? What is this about? Everywhere I look, I'm seeing houses in Albany that have vinyl windows. Every single window on some houses are vinyl. They're vinyl retrofit. Every single one.
If you could wrap it up.
Sure.
that'd be
So
good.
what I'm asking tonight is that you approve this window, because it is not a vinyl framed window. It is a vinyl clad window. It doesn't have as much of the substance of what you're trying to ban. And I think if you're really after a whole ban on the use of the material, then you have to extend it to building materials that are in the contents of the building. Things like vinyl flooring, resilient flooring, which show up in your recently adopted resolution for the green building measures. You have to ban PVC for plumbing waste pipes. You have to ban it for the use of screens and nail flanges and other things that appear in these products. I don't think you can be consistent with this ban unless you really understand what it is you're banning. And I don't think that conversation has happened in a public setting. I don't think it's happened robustly. I don't think there's been any outreach to the professional community, whether it's builders, material suppliers, window suppliers, or architects. And I think you can do that and achieve that goal. But I don't think you can do it now. I don't think you can legally do it now. The San Pablo Avenue plan doesn't.
So I think we've heard your
Okay.
argument.
Okay. And I've got written backup here. This is nothing but facts.
Sure. And then just to staff, I see there's a letter in front of me. Did that come to staff or come to the?
No.
Mr. Caldas brought him today. He brought 2 copies, so.
Paper copies, okay.
And this synthesizes all of the emails that I've been sending to staff, and also, in part, an email that I sent Commissioner McLeod.
Okay, if you could furnish electronic copies so that we could all have it and the public could have it, that would be great.
Absolutely, I can do that.
And not necessarily right now, but.
Sure.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I just, we do want to get questions to staff and the applicants, and, well, why don't you go ahead, Commissioner Wadi?
Sure, and part of this might be I'm having some technological issues here, zooming on the plan set. But 2 quick questions for you.
Sure.
One, I didn't see a window section here, and so I'm curious about, obviously, just to make sure I'm getting this right, the windows in question are exclusively being proposed within the new horizontal rear addition, correct? Okay, so nothing, no
retrofit.
replacement windows.
No retrofit.
And then sort of what I was going into is, from my perspective, there is a huge difference, regardless of the actual material of the window. There's actually a huge difference on the aesthetic result when it's a retrofit window where you're, taking out the sash and putting in a new frame and sash, as opposed to when you're building building it from the ground up, where you're, building it into the framing in the proper way. So maybe if you can just talk a little bit about how this will appear as opposed to like a replacement window or a retrofit window?
Sure, that's a great question. Thank you, Elizabeth. Can I use your microphone and go over here?
Yeah, sure.
So for years and years and years, when we used a vinyl window on many of these projects that have been approved by the staff and by the commission, when we used a narrow profile window, whether it was vinyl like this one, which is narrow profile, and let me explain what that means. It just means that the frame is not very thick. It fits well within the thickness of the wall. These frames are designed to fit exactly within the thickness of the wall. And in this statement, I point to the Residential Design Review Guidelines, page 27, that has the illustration that shows how we accommodate narrow profile windows, whether they are vinyl, metal, or fiberglass, because those three windows tend to come in a narrower profile. And we provide a detail that was grabbed by the last planning senior planner to appear in the design review guidelines. So the drawings that are on page 27 of the Residential Design Review Guidelines from my office. 5 of my projects appear in that document, and about half a dozen other drawings of projects that I think reached what you refer to as exceptional design. So what we do is we put it in either we recess it and oversize the window opening and recess it so that it can achieve that 2-inch recess that historically has been asked for. Now, I will point out that lots of windows that are installed newly and have been approved by the city don't meet the 2-inch standard. They're about an inch and a quarter, sometimes 7/8, but they still provide a shadow line. Including the project at 1040 Key Route, where we used fiberglass windows, but we specified a very high quality Milgard Tuscany profile. Planning manager rightfully said, I don't really want to get involved in the adjudication of the specification of windows. It's, because there are so many choices. I brought you up, 10% of the choices that are out there, or maybe 5% of the choices that are out there. These windows, for example, this is the outside of the window. So this sash is definitely recessed. When we do casement windows, the window might migrate a little bit more towards the front, but it's still recessed and meets the intent of the standard from a design review guideline point of view. When we emulate and match existing details of older houses by either putting a stucco mold or a shingle mold or a flat casing with a profile, houses have lots of different exterior details. We add that to this. It doesn't come integral with the window. On some products, you can order those classic historical profiles as being integral with the window. On others, you can't. And again, this product, this is the 400 series, which costs even more than the 200 series. But again, you can see, you can see a nail flange here, and you can see that the window is only recessed a little bit when it's a casement window. When it's a double hung window, the lower sash is back over here, and so it meets the 2-inch standard. The worst appearing windows in both the retrofit situation and new construction are the flatter, narrower frame windows that, for their own reasons or not, either do a reasonable job like this one where the sash is recessed from the frame, or they don't even try. And I think over the years, those were the windows that you really frowned upon. Those were the windows that no one liked. And unfortunately, those are the windows that almost everyone uses in the retrofit situation. So when I drove around, and I'll send you my photo library.
Let me just check in with Commissioner Wadi. I want to see if your question has been answered or is being answered.
Yes, he's I think, explaining. I mean, and more what I'm trying to get at is the issue. I mean, the second question was me going to ask, what is the reveal proposed on this and as it relates to that? But I was more talking about the relationship. With some retrofit windows, you're still going to see like another frame basically here before you hit the wall. So it's sort of like wall, frame, and then a whole new window that's been popped in. And to me, those look really bad. And sort of unauthentic because effectively the glass part, the part of the window that moves, is smaller than what it would have naturally been because those details, if built properly, are kind of hidden behind the wall. And so to me, there is actually a really important difference of whether they are replacement windows or being built new and sort of designed properly, and there's an aesthetic difference. So that was sort of the first part of the question, but maybe you can turn to the second part of the question around the 2-inch recess that's a standard and talk through that.
Sure. So it's also in my statement. Did I drop my statement there? Okay, let me just reference
Sorry,
this.
I think some of us didn't get a copy.
No, it's okay. So again, along the lines of the detail that shows up on page 27 in the Residential Design Review Guidelines, and if you need a copy of that, I have a copy of that.
That's okay, I'd rather just listen to you explain it rather than me read and not be able to listen and read at the
Okay,
same time.
so I'm just going to read this little part here. The use of narrow profile, flatter window frames such as vinyl frame windows, metal frame windows, and fiberglass windows can still meet the design review guidelines by providing a detail, such as the one that appears on page 27 in the guidelines, which recesses the window in the thickness of the exterior wall framing to provide the shadow and dimension the policy has long sought. This is becoming easier to do when considering that recent energy compliance regulations that require high-performance exterior walls to have continuous exterior rigid foam insulation that is routinely at least 1.5 inches thick by itself. So the point is, as we're building out the thicknesses of these walls to meet the standards, we're actually making walls that don't have the same cookie sandwich. Suddenly, the walls have more thickness to the outside. But it doesn't change the nail flange position in relation to the structural frame. So it's set back, and we have to do something about that. We either have to do an jam extension or something. We have to do something to add to the window in order to achieve that. And we can do it without the consequence that you were referring to, which is, somehow there's going to be less glazing area and more meat. I too don't like that. I don't like it when we have, these window profiles that are really fat, and then the companies that do the retrofit have to use a goof strip because the windows aren't manufactured for your old window size. They're 2 inches smaller, and they're giving the installer the flexibility to put a goof strip in all the way around. And when clients choose to do that and come to you for the window retrofit application, you say nothing about it. You ask for a detail of the window largely to address energy compliance and not to address the 2-inch recess. No one can stand up and say that the city of Albany or any city has been applying any reasonable standard to retrofit windows. They're flat, they're on the surface, they're terrible, they don't have window trims that match the old house. But they are expedient to install. You can get them in there easy without destroying the building. That's their merit.
So Commissioner Wada, your concern was that these might be replacement/retrofit windows?
No, I wasn't concerned. I just wanted him to talk it out for everyone to sort of understand. I had a hunch of what the answer was going to be, but I think it's important for him to talk out that all of these things, that the sole variable is not material, is sort of the punchline when it comes to the quality and aesthetics of the window. So I just wanted him to explain, to confirm, but to explain a little bit of some of those details. So thank you. That answers my question.
Thank you. I appreciate that.
Okay, other commissioners yes, Commissioner Moore.
Yeah, I understand your argument against prohibition of vinyl windows in principle, but I'm kind of curious about your choice of windows for this particular project, because you have proposed replacement of 10 windows, not replacement, but
New
provision of 10 windows.
That's right.
And out of those 10 windows, 5 are fiberglass and 5 are vinyl.
Yes.
So I'm trying to understand what is the advantage you are seeing in those particular vinyl windows, while you are also providing, 5
Sure.
fiberglass windows when you can have all of them
Sure.
fiberglass.
Some of the fiberglass windows, and I have to look at my drawings, but some of the fiberglass windows that we specified don't have divided lights. And one of the weaknesses of the general fiberglass window lines is that they don't have as much dimension. So for example, you've got one of them up there, the green one. You can see how the window sash, I think it's the green one here. This is the fiberglass. This one is the fiberglass, and this one. These two are the fiberglass. And so if you look at them carefully, this one from the outside does have the recess, which is the all Ultrex by Marvin. It used to be Integrity. This one has the recess, and this one doesn't. So in order to install this one, we'd have to make sure that this is on the plywood frame and that the stucco builds out, and then that is recessed. But we struggle to get these details on this product, on the all Ultrex. We don't struggle on this one. So there's a essential and elevator other lines, and there's a big price difference. These windows are very expensive. These windows are almost as expensive as the aluminum clad windows. So the client worked with their builder on this, and I have specified all of these windows here except for that modern, except for this one. I specified all of these types, and I've never specified this one. And so it is budgetary. It is also in this marketplace availability. The nicer windows are taking 15, 16 weeks. When you have a slot lined up with a builder, those 15, 16 weeks of delay matter. They really matter. And unfortunately, I haven't said anything about it, but we've been delayed 2 months on this, just on this issue. And there's every other aspect of the project is conforming and subject to staff design review. It was only this in a sense roadblock or hiccup, which I was completely unaware of. I was blindsided because I don't view vinyl framed windows as the same as a vinyl clad window.
Understood, but let's stick to answering questions.
Sure.
For the moment. Did you have other questions from commissioners? Or staff or the? Okay, I have a couple questions. The revisions, and by the way, thank you for the detailed report, staff, about the vinyl. Staff has discretion on applications to change standard conditions of approval. Is that correct?
That is correct.
Okay.
For
and so-
any project that is not subject to the Housing Accountability Act, so that any project that's not a new unit. So for this project,
Okay.
yes.
All right, thank you for that. And then you did, for the applicant, you did mention it's a budgetary issue and I hear you that it's a timeline issue. But what is the percentage budget increase if you don't use vinyl over the cost of the overall project?
Could I have the client address that?
Sure. If they're willing.
Yeah, so I did check with our builder, if we were going to not be able to use the windows that we were hoping to use, and he said you can anticipate at least $5,000 more in expense.
And the overall cost of the project, do you have an estimate?
The overall cost of the project is like 300 something, 310.
Okay. All right.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And you mentioned that the fiberglass windows are almost as expensive as the aluminum clad. I
The
think
wood aluminum clad, yeah, they're really
wood and
pricey.
aluminum clad. Okay.
Super high performance, don't get me wrong,
Ah.
energy, super high performance.
Okay.
Aesthetics, a little abridged as compared to the traditional wood frame window with the aluminum cladding. That's the one we've probably used the most, we've probably presented to the board the most. I had familiarity with Leslie and Berkeley, and we probably used, more aluminum clad wood windows. But we have clients that come to us with different price points and different budgets.
Okay. Well, thank you for that answer. Yes, Commissioner McLeod.
Actually, I do have a question. I guess, I suppose for staff, is this subject, this project is not subject to exceptional design requirements.
That is correct.
So is it subject to the 2-inch setback rule on the windows?
So that is something that we have in our residential design guidelines. And in order to promote those guidelines that are guidelines, we have added that as a standard condition of approval to have that 2-inch recess. And that has been part of the standard conditions of approval since I've been here, which isn't, I take it very long. So yes, that has been,
That applies to all projects now.
that are subject to design review.
Oh, subject to design review, but if this was just a kitchen remodel that wasn't coming to us,
Correct. There wouldn't be
They
subject
could-
to conditions of approval.
and it could be whatever flat-faced window or whatever. yeah.
Correct. We work with applicants submitting for new window retrofits to encourage them. And to further promote the design guidelines, we have added these as standard conditions of approval
Okay, to all, okay.
for those projects that we can.
So they do need to provide the 2-inch recess, or plane of glass to plane of wall, I guess, or,
Who
Per the
does?
condition
this
of approval,
project.
correct.
yes, okay, just be clear.
Just to clarify, but as Mr. Calder states, these aren't in the ordinance. These are applied as conditions of approval to further the design guidelines that the city adopted in 2009.
Yeah. Okay,
Sorry, can you elaborate on that? You said the conditions of approval are in an ordinance?
No, they are not.
Oh,
That is why if you are applying for a window retrofit that is not subject to design review, you are not subject to the 2-inch reveal, the recess, or anything else in the design guidelines. We can only highly encourage it.
Sure.
So,
And this project's subject to design review, just not exceptional design?
correct. Exceptional design is for those projects that
Over
are over
0.45.
45% FAR. Yep.
Okay. So anything subject to design review, which includes any expansion, I would presume, is subject to design review, which is the design guidelines. Anything over 0.45 is exceptional design, and there's specific things called out in the design guidelines that apply specifically extra, like a landscape plan, for example. We deal with that a lot, and then some other things. Okay, thank you.
Well, that is curious to me that we don't apply necessarily the conditions of approval or the guidelines. We don't, staff doesn't always apply the guidelines or enforce the guidelines, maybe I should put it that way, when it's something that doesn't come to us. So that seems to me, I didn't,
I need to correct you. If a project, there are many administrative design reviews that do have conditions of approval. This would have been administrative and not shown before you. If a project is ministerial, building permit only, we are not able to add conditions of approval to that.
I see. Are we able to apply objective design standards, or not even that?
If we were to adopt objective design standards, yes.
Yes, okay, great, okay, which is something I think we should do. But that's not this, I don't want to get off track because that's not on the agenda, but I would love to talk about that more in the future. All right, getting back to this project, it looks like we've finished all our questions here. What's that? Oh, one, okay, yeah, and then we'll go to any public comment, any members of the audience, either virtual or here, who would like to speak on this item. You'll have 3 minutes each.
Would you like to come up and speak more?
It's my staff, that's one.
Oh, okay. 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 Yeah, that was Liz Humana, the property owner. And if anyone in the virtual audience wishes to speak, please use the raise the hand icon. No.
Okay. Well, then back to the commission. Okay, and it's time for comments. And it looks like Commissioner Waddy is ready to go.
Sure. Happy to kick things off. So thank you for this conversation. I always admit in my day job that I'm a bit of a window nerd, and I think it was all initiated by my first planning job as a municipal planner was for the city of Piedmont. And the city of Piedmont, I think, has probably one, or if not the most stringent window requirements, at least in the East Bay, if not potentially the entire Bay Area. Piedmont prohibits, for example, retrofit windows. Those are not even allowed to come in, and prohibits vinyl on all facades outright. So, however, flash forward to where we are today. My recollection of a lot of the projects, and I can't keep track of how long I've been on the commission, I think since about 2018 or so, was that, and I've been quite focused on windows, is that for exceptional design projects, I feel like we've been pretty stringent on it. but I don't feel like we have been for the projects that didn't require exceptional design, because I do remember many times where I was thinking in my head, those are kind of crummy windows, but this isn't seeking exceptional design. And in situations, and I think we've had this even in instances where it was exceptional design, where they were on facades that aren't street facing. And so for me, if this project did involve any window that was visible from the street, I would have a much firmer boundary about there being a vinyl window proposed. I agree a vinyl clad window is a much different product than a pure vinyl product in terms of the aesthetics. It's still not wood. It's still not, aluminum clad in terms of the aesthetic. There is absolutely an aesthetic delta between the two. But for me, the primary issue is, especially with this being only a one-story addition, I don't even think neighbors are going to be able to see these windows really. I mean, if in theory somebody had a normal-sized fence in their backyard and some landscaping, I'm not sure these windows are really going to be perceived by anyone. And to me, the primary focus of the design guidelines is to ensure really, massing of buildings are articulated appropriately, but that the architecture from sort of the three-dimensional portion that's visible from the public realm has a high quality because that's of the public interest. And I think, I don't think they're as much about, what somebody does on the back facade of their house that no one else can see. So for me, there are those few specific variables are such that I don't have an issue with vinyl clad and fiberglass being used. Again, I think it's a little weird how they're kind of hodgepodgey combination of the two because they don't seem to, on the plans at least, have a logic to their orientation. But I also, because of what I just said, don't totally care. It's on a one-story rear addition that isn't visible from the street. And I know we haven't been consistent with that. We have absolutely authorized at this commission since I've been here, people coming up with vinyl windows. So that would sort of be the general policy direction that I would support is certainly, I would be even willing to take it a step further than I think we've done and said for exceptional design, it's 360 degrees on the house in terms of quality windows and really being stringent about the 2-inch reveal and no vinyl products, either clad or wholesale. In my opinion, I actually don't think fiberglass looks great, but that ship has sailed, I think. But for the projects that aren't exceptional design, I think particularly on non-visible facades, being more flexible on that would be something I would feel very comfortable with and sort of striking the balance between, those are projects also typically where people do have much lower budgets. These are not people who are sinking a ton of money and are sort of balancing expanding the very small homes in Albany and making them sort of adaptable for sort of modern living. And it's likely the projects where people are pinching their pennies the most are on the projects that aren't hitting over that 0.45 FAR and they're doing smaller additions. And so I think to have a little more leniency where it doesn't really impact the public realm is a little bit of a no harm, no foul, to use a bad phrase there. So that's the position that I'll be taking tonight and why. Thanks.
Thank you, Commissioner. Any other commissioners wish to comment? Commissioner McLeod?
Sure. Yeah, I'm ambivalent. I mean, I really don't like vinyl as a material. We do a lot of sustainability type work. And if I could just, if you would give me a second. Vinyl is on the Living Building Challenge Red List, and it's on there for a good reason. And if I could read just a little bit, if you bear with me. Okay, PVC. PVC's vinyl chloride monomer building block is a known human carcinogen, according to the U.S. Department of Health and Human Services. In addition, PVC is a persistent organic pollutant source material. Due to its chlorine content, PVC often contains other red list ingredients such as cadmium, lead, and phthalates. Manufacture and disposal of chlorinated polymers can result in production of dioxins and disposal phases. Dioxins are some of the most potent toxins known to humans, with no safe limit for exposure and strong propensity for bioaccumulation. In addition, dioxins are highly persistent in the environment. So, that's sort of a baseline That's why I think we don't want to have this material used in the city. In general, even though it's used in other places, it doesn't mean that, we should necessarily be allowing it in windows. But at the same time, I am struck by the kind of ambiguity in our ordinances, and in this specific case, I'm kind of agreeing with Commissioner Waddy. At the same time, I think if we do want to ban it for windows, we should be much more explicit probably and have to come up with some kind of ordinance or regulation. And it's not the only material to ban. I mean, there's lots of others on this red list that are in common usage. And I know the Climate Action Committee has talked at some times about, certain other ordinances, green building standards that could be adopted. But we're not there yet, and it would take some discussion and I think a lot of, input from the community as well as discussions amongst ourselves, and probably council would have to be involved. So I think the fact that we don't have a real outright ban on it, and it is somewhat ambiguous, and it's not a full vinyl window frame, et cetera, I would be inclined to allow this at this point. When you look at the cladding, there's not a whole lot of it. I mean, the other problem with vinyl that we've noticed or known for a long time is that it does not weather well. It does not last that long. It tends to degrade a lot in the sun. So that's another reason why vinyl looks really bad after a while. It is not supposed to be exposed to the sun. PVC will degrade in sunlight. Maybe it's coated or painted, but at some point that paint cracks or fades and the windows deteriorate. So, another aspect of sustainability is durability. So the fact that you have to go back and replace your windows in 15 or 20 years is also a problem when fiberglass or the aluminum clad would last 50 years. Much more than the lifetime that we'll even spend in the house, perhaps. So that's the other consideration. I think the 2-inch setback, it's irrespective of the materials used. It's really doesn't apply. It doesn't make a difference what window. You can make any window set back 2 inches with a little bit of gymnastics. So, I don't think the argument that the vinyl only could be used for that really holds water. So I guess this is a long way of saying I don't like it, but in this case I would say it's okay to use these vinyl clad windows, and then we should update our standards, make it explicit going forward.
And if I can just jump back in, because you prompted what I forgot. The other thing I was going to mention is on the sort of the environmental side. I completely agree with you. I do think, you want to have products you don't have to replace. And that's incredibly important. But I do think actually singling out windows, although I know they are a big replaced component of buildings, so I think that's why there's much more attention on it. It's a little unfair to say we're not allowing the windows because they're vinyl when there's no issue about, people putting in quasi-toxic insulation in their home or using vinyl floorings or high VOC paints and like all of the other things that go into the construction industry. Like the construction industry can be a very toxic process, and it can be the opposite of that depending on materials that are used. And so I think we need to have a holistic conversation around this. And, I know with sort of green building codes, it's usually, you've got a checklist and you have to meet points, and it's trade-offs for the property owner to choose where they want to pick and choose. But again, I think we need to not create this policy on one project, but have this be a larger policy conversation that we establish first. I'm not opposed to it, but I do think we need to have it at a policy level. And to me, creating just standard conditions out of the blue isn't actually developing policy that's had public input. Like, I think the public input is what the design guidelines are, and those design guidelines don't say you shall never. And so I think either we need to have a public dialogue where we separately agendize that and have a conversation about whether we want those guidelines to say we shall never, and talk about the environmental things holistically, and then migrate that into sort of standard conditions of approval. But I think just sort of, we made a little too far of a jump to go from what the design guidelines say to say carte blanche for every single project they shall not have vinyl. So anyhow, hopefully I didn't cut you off. I thought you were done, but you
Well,
prompted
if I
more
could just
thoughts.
Keep the conversation going. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that's my position, essentially. But at the same time, the state is regulating a lot of these things, so, a lot of it is through VOC limits, and those are getting stricter and stricter, so in fact, things like vinyl flooring will not be allowed at some point. A lot of high VOC paints are no longer, available to use, so. But I do think, right, it's probably a bigger conversation. And there are green building standards we could adopt that would say you can't use vinyl. This Living Building Challenge is one of the most extreme ones, in a sense, that it has the most prohibitions. But there are others that could apply and make a difference and make our homes and buildings healthier and safer. So, yeah, there is a bigger conversation here, I think. But in the meantime, I think back to the kind of the ambiguity of our standards, or, yeah, I don't think it's necessarily fair to put a blanket no on this project, at least as things stand. So, yeah, and I'd like to say, furthermore, the design looks nice. We wouldn't even be here because it would have been either on the consent calendar or just approved. So, yeah, it looks like a very nice little addition, making your house more functional and livable, and nice little thing going on there. So.
Commissioner Moman, did you have any comments?
I agree with most of the comments Commissioner Wadi and Commissioner McLeod has, and I'm also kind of I think the disparity of application of standards based on the process of permitting should be fair, and so there should be a kind of a larger discussion about application of these standards overall. So just because a certain project goes through a certain way of permitting should not have different standards to follow. And so if vinyl is permitted for building permit only, then why should a project that goes through a planning permit have to follow that? So there should be some kind of, I think, uniformity in that. And I agree, some of these windows are like backyard facing, not really, having big impact on the street frontage, anything. So at least for this project, we should not really be stringent about that.
Okay, thank you, Commissioner Moman. Commissioner Hudson.
Yeah, I'd just like to say, I think Mr. KALB has brought up a lot of inconsistencies in the use of building materials like PVC, and it hasn't been very well thought out. And so I think that this exception should really go forth. I also wanted to ask, is your building on the south and east side of your house? So therefore, it's not going to get as much exposure, because I think you have a big tree in the back, if I'm not mistaken. Yeah, so I mean, in terms of the weathering, I'm not sure that you would experience as much of a decline in the quality of the material over time as might be predicted if it were in the full sun all the time. So, yeah. Okay, thank you.
Okay, well, I'll give some comments. I'm going to give a contrarian view. I'm going to thank the staff for pointing out the dangers of vinyl, and what staff presented echoes what Commissioner McLeod read about the dangers of vinyl. And vinyl is part of a group of materials that we generally call plastics, which are killing us, which are invading our oceans. The oceans are full of particles of plastic, and I think that it was the right thing for us to do, not only for aesthetic reasons, but for environmental reasons, to say that we don't want vinyl windows. I do agree, though, we should have a holistic conversation about that. That's true, because there are plenty of other, unfortunately, cheaper materials made of plastics which are available for builders, which I wish they weren't. And I think they're cheaper because we don't fully assess the costs, the environmental costs of making plastic. And if we did, then the natural materials would or the renewable materials would be the same price or cheaper. So I think that's unfortunate. I think we might want to elevate this to the Sustainability Committee at some point too. But I do want to, I do also want to say though that I think the planning manager has, I think maybe, I don't want to speak for her, but maybe one of the reasons that she put this into standards of approval is because over the years, we have very many times said, no, we are not going to allow the vinyl windows. You do have to change those to aluminum clad windows. We've told that a number of projects that, no, we're not going to accept that. And so I think the planning manager has taken that to heart. So I'm not happy and not in agreement that we should make this project an exception. And the applicant has said that he has been here many times before, and he knows this as well, that we have not favored vinyl windows. So despite his great advocacy for the windows, it doesn't sell them to me. If we're going forth to approve the project, I'm going to give I'm going to give a no, which will not count because I think you're all going to be yes. What's the word for that? The symbolic no. But I think I see where my fellow commissioners are. But I want to give the symbolic no to say, yeah, I think we shouldn't make an exception here. I don't see a good reason for that. And I do want to agree that we need to study this more fully in the future, or someone does. Commissioner McLeod, you had a follow-up?
Yeah, in a lot of ways I agree with you, and I do appreciate staff going to bat on this one. I really do appreciate that. I think that's important that we up our game in terms of our environmental standards. But it's almost an administrative question. I mean, you just need to apply things fairly and consistently across all projects, I think. So I think maybe that's something we could work on.
Yeah, I'd love to work on the ways we can make sure we have, maybe if there's some things that are really important, maybe there's ways to make them non-overridable, even by this commission. And
that should be across the board, like, whatever kind of permits you go through, even over-the-counter permit should have that condition, I think, so that it is equitable, it is fair with everyone and not just like, one small project.
So the objective design standards could speak to that, yeah.
So
Great.
can staff make a few marks here?
Yes, please.
So first of all, there has been inconsistency, as Chair Pilch mentioned, in applying whether we do this. So in doing plan checks and everything coming kind of late to the game here, it was an attempt to be more consistent. And one can apply conditions of approval to projects that are subject to design review that are consistent that wouldn't apply to ministerial projects. That said, as I mentioned, that's not the direction this is going, which is fine. But my goal is not to have this be an exception and not to have someone come and have to be a squeaky wheel. So what I hope that you do as part of your motion is clarify whether to strike this entirely, the prohibition on vinyl, from the standard condition, or as Commissioner Waddy alluded to, maybe apply it only to projects that require exceptional design review, those over 45%, and or those front-facing windows. So if you can provide clarification, because again, I don't want one person, okay, I'll appeal this. That's not the intent. It is about consistency of application.
That's right, and I think maybe we should also, be clear about like your vinyl window versus a wood window clad with vinyl has different qualities, because in addition to the environmental, like vinyl window doesn't have insulation qualities that are desired, so that has impact on energy consumption and stuff like that. Wood is much better. So we should look at that also when we, specify something about that.
So I want,
That's for time being, like for this approval. But I think we surely should have a larger discussion and then have some, guidelines.
so I wonder if it, I hear you, planning manager, I wonder if it would be appropriate to include that with our motion of approval, or maybe have a separate motion about direction. But
I'm going to make this up, but I'm going to say have a motion with direction for future design review. I think that would be.
okay. Well, if someone would like to try a motion, looks like Commissioner Wade is ready to try.
Happy to propose a motion. So I will make a motion to approve item 7-1 as proposed, and further to direct staff to amend the standard conditions of approval such that projects seeking exceptional design are prohibited from having any type of vinyl window, and those projects seeking just regular design shall be prohibited from having vinyl windows on any street-facing facade.
Now, are there any differentiations between full vinyl and vinyl clad?
I feel like with those, from my perspective, those two variables, I'm less concerned about it, because then on the back, you can do either. Because again, I think on the facade, to me, one of the problems with vinyls, they're often not paintable. And so if somebody comes in, buys the house, and they want a different color scheme, they can't paint them. Or if it's one set of replacement windows next to existing windows, it can sometimes be challenging, and there might be some products, but often it nullifies the warranty when you paint. So that's, to me, why on the front facade, like kind of any kind of vinyl product is problematic, is sort of that consistency factor. So, sorry, long story long, I would just keep it as I just stated, if we got the votes to pass that. And with further direction that I know we already established our work plan, there may not be room this year, but to kind of add to the never-ending running list, I think a larger conversation around green building standards and materials, or in collaboration with, I don't know what agency or group and committee in Albany, but to continue further having that conversation.
Okay, we can vote on that motion unless someone has a substitute motion.
We have to have a second.
What's that?
We have to have a second.
True, we have to have a second.
Then we could discuss. Well, I'll second the motion.
Yeah, and we can also have substitute motions without seconds, but
Yeah.
but we do have a motion and a second. Are we ready to vote then? I think I'm going to still vote no on this one, just so you know. So, so I'll do a roll call. Commissioner Hudson,
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod,
I'll vote yes.
Commissioner Moman,
Yes.
Commissioner Wadi,
Yes.
and I vote no. All right, your project is approved, and does this project have story poles? Probably not, it's a single story, so no, yeah. All right, congratulations, and thanks for coming. All right, let's move on to new business, the election of the new Planning Commission Chair and Vice Chair, and that's fascinating study of window materials here. Last time, what I did is to ask that we have a little discussion first about who might want to do what. So I'll ask you before we have nominations, who might be interested in being chair or vice chair, if anyone wants to disclose that. You could talk now about if you want to be chair or vice chair.
Well, I'd be happy to be chair. I've
Okay,
been here quite a while and have not had the opportunity yet. And
okay.
I think I'm the second longest serving person here, so.
Oh, and sorry,
Commissioner Wadi, so.
and I,
her extended period as chair, which I greatly appreciated watching her and learning from her.
Okay, thank you for that. I'm sorry, I did mean to ask a question of staff about this one, though. And I do not intend to try to continue more than 2 years, but I do want to ask, is the prohibition of more than 2 consecutive years, is that something the commission voted on, or the council voted on, or where did that come from?
That comes from the advisory board handbook, and was that done by
So
city
it was-
council?
I believe that was approved by city council, maybe it was the city manager, but it's a written
Yeah.
policy across all commissions and committees.
Okay, thank you. Just curious about that one. Okay, so we have one person interested in being chair. Anyone else interested in want to throw their hat in the ring for that? I've seen head waves. As I mentioned, I'm not going to continue as chair and vice chair. Anyone want to?
Make a motion to nominate Commissioner McLeod as chair.
I'll second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Commissioner Hudson for Commissioner McLeod as chair.
I move that Commissioner McLeod become the chair of the
Well,
commission.
all right, we already had a motion, but now we need your vote, yes or no?
I will say yes.
Yes. Commissioner McLeod?
Yes.
Commissioner Moman?
Yes.
Commissioner Wadi? Commissioner Pilch, me and myself, yes. So that is approved. And how about vice chair? Commissioner Moman, you're kind of next in seniority. You might be appropriate for that role. Would you like to try it?
Yeah, I would like to try.
Okay, great.
All right. I make a motion to nominate Commissioner Moman for vice chair.
I'll second that. And we'll vote on that again. Commissioner Wadi?
Aye.
Commissioner Moman?
Yes.
Commissioner McLeod?
Aye.
Commissioner Hudson?
Yes.
And I vote yes as well. Okay, congratulations. We have our new chair and vice chair. And if you don't mind, I'll just finish out this meeting and you can take up at the next meeting. And I'll be so glad that I don't have to make excuses anymore for being late and missing meetings. And thank you so much for both of you stepping up. All right, next step, housing element implementation. Did staff want to talk about this a little bit?
Yes, and first I'd like to thank you, ex-chair Pilch, for your excellent service. You're an amazing chair, and thank you. So yes, we are moving forward, as you know, with housing element implementation. And the RISE Commission has it in their work plan to move forward with a lot of that implementation. In the 6th cycle of the housing element does have a lot of additional outreach and affirmatively furthering fair housing opportunities. So I think they're an appropriate commission have their input. In addition, since a lot of the ordinances will be through the zoning code, as well as due to kind of the experience that this commission has, we had a brainchild of having kind of a joint study session with interested members of the Planning and Zoning Commission, as well as the RISE Commission, as well as potentially some other members of the housing provider group, and potentially Albany Thrives, I think it is, to participate in kind of the initial study session and see how that goes, and kind of look through the menu of options that are moving forward with tenant protections to start, and get kind of community input and feedback, including those of sitting commissioners. And so with that, you can talk about it now. You can let me know now if that is something that is of interest to you. This is also something that, we're not limiting it to one. If you are all interested, that's great. At this point, it will be a study session. So what we are looking for is just participation from interested parties. I will let you know that if there are members of the Planning Commission that are participating in this, for those, for that study session, and if it moves forward in the future as something productive that we will go ongoing, we would not have two planning, unless it's necessary, but we have seen a slowdown in projects going to the Planning Commission. The thought was that we'd only have one Planning Commission a month, and the other spot could be reserved for this type of meeting, so not to overwhelm you with night meetings. So
Gotcha.
with that, you're free to just think about it or.
Okay, well, so it can be 0 to 5 of us to participate, yes. And all of us or none of us could participate, so, okay.
Though it's not in the ordinance, similar to the vinyl, I'm going to highly encourage at least one of you to, if not more of you. Because you have an amazing backgrounds and ability to participate. That would be great.
Does anyone want to give their interest now?
Sorry?
Do you want to state, are you interested now? Do you want to tell staff now, or you want to get back to it?
Yeah, I'm interested. I just have a couple of questions. Like, what would be the nature of the study session? Would that be like a kind of a workshop or something?
It would be a workshop. Our idea right now is to, Sophie Gable is working hard on kind of implementing the phase 1 that was presented to you all on some of the tenant protections. So the format that we're still formulating is to present kind of a menu of options and to get feedback from different members of the community on that menu of options. I doubt it will be, it may be, but it will just be gathering the feedback and see how much of a consolidated recommendation, if any, that it can go to city council, or if it will need further kind of digesting before it goes to city council. I do not see it as discrete, kind of a recommendation as some of our other ordinances, because there's going to be a lot more, I think, emotion and disparate views that will be gathering as we talk about these issues. So it will be kind of just fielding those menu options and relaying ultimately to city council, like what we heard from the community, for them to ultimately make the decisions on the.
So, in addition to tenant protection, what else involves phase 1 implementation?
Oh goodness, you're putting me on the spot. Do you have that on? If you give me a moment, I can look this up.
And while you're looking at that, I will also express interest.
Great.
Anyone else want to express interest right now, or you want to? It sounds like you can contact Planning Manager Mendez anytime as well.
Exactly, and I will follow up with an email, just both confirming your both as participation. You can change, and can I send you in an email as well as try to do this live?
I just
what
wanted
it
to
is.
know, like, what other topics would be, and what is the timeline for that? Because
Just cause for eviction, rent stabilization, rent registry, access to legal counsel. There might be one or two more.
One more,
Yeah,
more controversial was the, I think, first right of buying for tenant or something.
Which one was?
Oh, there was one about.
TOPA, yeah. So
That is not in phase 1.
It's
Yes.
not?
No, no. So I will send you what we currently have for phase 1, because it evolved a little bit based on feedback from HCD, as well as kind of thinking more about synergies between the, it doesn't make sense to put rent registry in phase 3 if we're talking about rent stabilization in phase 1. Some of these just do better together. So I will send that in the email, and like I say, I think a lot of it, and first will be a workshop, just kind of a study session, going over what this means, what the options, various options are, and gathering feedback, so.
okay, and this is with only RISE, not with stakeholders, general public.
It would be with public stakeholders. Again, we're not sure how we will set this up, if we will have it here in the dais, or if we'll have it at the community center. I think we do want to involve members of the housing provider group, as well as folks, we don't really have a real renter group here, but folks who are focused on that. And I would love to have just other members, 1 or 2 members of the community who kind of in the steering part, but we don't want to exclude folks at this point, yeah. Oh, and for timing, we are hoping to start end of February, but I'm thinking more beginning March, very honestly, sometime in March to have this workshop.
Okay. And that would happen like every month or so?
Exactly. A lot of it will depend on how long it will, I think in the beginning, maybe every month or every other month, depending how long it takes to digest and prepare the agenda for the next meeting. Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
All right, well, immediately, thank you to Commissioners Pilch and Moman for volunteering. That's
Yeah.
great.
So, and just to clarify, these are public meetings, so.
Yes, they will be Brown Act, they'll be, yeah,
Got it, thank you.
noticed and, yes.
Any other comments or questions from commissioners on this item? Okay. If not, I'll note that our next meeting, is a month from now.
If we have something, I will let you know. We've had quite a bit of slowdown, which in a way I'm relieved. I didn't say that out loud. But hopefully we'll get some work on objective standards and everything else we have to move forward. So
Yeah, hopefully it gives you a little time to work on that stuff. Great. February 28th. And if there's nothing else, meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everybody.